The morning sun painted the wheat fields of New Haven in shades of gold. Danny Johnson ran through the tall grass, his 8-year-old legs carrying him as fast as they could. Behind him, Lucy Miller and Jake Brown tried to keep up their laughter, mixing with the sound of wind through the grain. "Wait for us," Lucy called out, her blonde hair streaming behind her like a banner. She was only 7, but she never let the boys leave her behind. Danny slowed down near the old oak tree that marked the edge of the Johnson farm. His parents had planted it when they first arrived on New Haven 5 years ago. Now it stood tall and strong, just like the little farming colony itself. "I won today," Danny said, breathing hard. "That makes it 10 wins for me and only 8. For you, Jake." Jake Brown pushed his dark hair out of his eyes and grinned. "Tomorrow, I'll beat you for sure. My dad says I'm getting faster every day." The 3 children sat in the shade of the oak tree and looked out over their small town. New Haven had only 300 people, but it felt like home to everyone who lived there. The houses were simple but well-built, with gardens full of vegetables and flowers. Smoke rose from chimneys where mothers cooked lunch for their families. "Mother," Lisa Johnson called from the farmhouse porch. "Danny, time to come in and wash up. Your father will be home soon." The boy waved at his mother. She was a kind woman with gentle eyes who had followed her husband Pete to this distant world. Pete Johnson worked hard to grow the best wheat on New Haven. He had been a soldier once, but now he only wanted to raise his son in peace. Lucy and Jake ran back toward the town center where their own families waited. Danny watched them go, then walked slowly to his house. He loved living on New Haven. There were no big cities, no loud machines, no dangerous streets, just farms and families and friends who felt like brothers and sisters. Inside the farmhouse, Lisa hugged her son and helped him wash his hands. "Did you have fun playing with Lucy and Jake?" "We raced again," Danny said. "I won, but Jake is getting faster. Maybe tomorrow he'll beat me." Lisa smiled. "That's what makes a good race. If it was too easy, it wouldn't be fun." Pete Johnson came home just as the sun reached its highest point in the sky. He was a big man with strong hands that could fix anything that broke on the farm. Ouch! But when he looked at his wife and son, his eyes became soft and full of love. "How are my favorite people today?" Pete asked, lifting Danny up and spinning him. "Around Dad. I'm getting too big for that," Danny laughed, but he didn't really mind. The Johnson family sat down for lunch together, just like they did every day. They talked about the farm, about Danny's lessons with Mrs. Parker, the teacher, and about plans to visit the Miller family that evening. It was a normal day in their quiet, happy life. Captain Alex Turner walked through the town center, checking on things as he always did. He was the leader of the small defense force that protected New Haven. Most days, his biggest worry was keeping wild animals away from the farms. The 6 men under his command spent more time helping with harvest than fighting any enemies. Turner had been a real soldier once, fighting in the war between Earth and the Mars colonies, but those days were over. Now he just wanted to keep the people of New Haven safe and happy. He never expected that safety to be broken. High above the peaceful planet, ships moved through the darkness of space. They were sleek and dangerous, painted black to hide them from human sensors. Inside the largest ship, Commander Vexstar studied pictures of New Haven on his screen. Vexstar was a Zelthran, a race that looked like walking lizards with yellow eyes and sharp teeth. His people had built a huge trading empire by buying and selling anything that could make them rich. They sold weapons, rare metals, exotic foods, and sometimes even living beings to anyone who would pay their price. "The humans have 43 children in that colony," Vexstar told his officers. "They will bring us a good price in the slave markets of the Outer Rim." The other Zelthran nodded. They had done this many times before on other worlds. Take the children, sell them to buyers who asked no questions, and disappear before anyone could stop them. It was easy money, and the Zelthran Consortium had been doing it for 50 years. "Are the humans dangerous?" asked Lieutenant Kexavel, the youngest officer on the ship. Vexstar laughed, showing his sharp teeth. "Humans are farmers and workers. They have no real military. This will be our easiest raid yet. The commander had studied human colonies before. He knew they were often far from help, with only small defense forces and simple weapons. The Zelthron. Ships carried energy weapons that could cut through human metal like paper. Their soldiers wore armor that could stop human bullets. In every raid they had done, the humans gave up quickly when they saw how outmatched they were. Back on New Haven, the evening meal brought families together in warm, bright kitchens. The Johnson family shared dinner with the Millers and the Browns, just as they had planned. The adults talked about crops and weather, while the children played games at the edge of the table. "Next month we should have the best harvest yet, Pete," Johnson said. "The wheat is growing better than I ever hoped." "My corn is doing well too," said Bob Miller, Lucy's father. "Maybe we can trade some to the transport ship when it comes next spring." The women talked about plans for a school festival, where the children could show off what they had learned. Mrs. Parker, the teacher, had been working with them on reading and math. Some of the older kids were even learning about other planets and the history of human space travel. "I want to be a pilot someday," said Lucy. "I want to fly between the stars and see all the different worlds." "That sounds exciting," Lisa Johnson said. "But I hope you'll always remember to come home to New Haven." Captain Turner finished his evening patrol as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Everything seemed normal and peaceful. Families were safe in their homes. The animals were quiet in their pens. And the only sounds were the gentle wind and the distant laughter of children getting ready for bed. Turner had no way to know that death was falling toward his world from the stars above. The Zelthron ships had turned off their engines and were drifting down through the atmosphere like silent shadows. In a few hours, the peace of New Haven would be shattered forever. Danny Johnson fell asleep in his small bed, dreaming of racing through wheat fields and climbing trees with his friends. In the next room, his parents talked quietly about their plans for tomorrow. Outside, the night was calm and beautiful, with no sign of the nightmare that was about to begin. The attack came when most families were eating dinner. Danny Johnson was laughing at something his father said when the windows suddenly lit up with bright green light. Outside, strange ships dropped from the cloudy sky like metal birds of prey. "Is that?" Lisa Johnson asked, standing up from the dinner table. Her voice was worried but not yet afraid. Strange lights in the sky were unusual. But New Haven was far from any space routes. Pete Johnson moved to the window and looked outside. His face went pale when he saw the black ships landing in the town center. "Lisa, take Danny and go to the back room. Lock the door and don't come out." "Dad, what's happening?" Danny asked. He could hear the fear in his father's voice. Something he had never heard before. "Just do what your mother says, son. Everything will be okay." Pete reached into a closet and pulled out an old rifle. He had not touched it since coming to New Haven. But his soldier training came back quickly. All across the town, similar scenes played out in other homes. Captain Turner heard the sound of landing ships and ran outside. He had been eating with his wife when the attack began. One look at the sleek alien vessels told him that New Haven was in terrible danger. "Emergency alert," Turner shouted into his radio. "All Defense Force members report to the town center immediately. We are under attack by unknown forces." His 6 men came running from their homes, carrying whatever weapons they could find. Most had hunting rifles or old military gear from their time in human space forces. Turner knew it would not be enough against whatever technology these aliens possessed. The first Zelthron soldiers came out of their ships wearing black armor that covered them from head to foot. They moved like hunters, spreading out to surround the town. Their weapons hummed with energy that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Commander Vexstar stepped out of the largest ship and looked around at the simple human buildings. "Remember, we only want the children. Kill any adult who tries to stop us, but try not to damage the young ones. Damaged goods bring lower prices." The Zelthron soldiers understood their orders. They had done this before on other worlds. "Take the children. Quickly load them into transport pods and leave before any help could arrive." Simple and profitable. Bob Miller was outside his house trying to fix a broken fence when he saw the alien soldiers coming down his street. He dropped his tools and ran inside, slamming the door behind him. I'm all with all rewan when I see I'm all in one I'm all whenever I'm all I'm some we're some son of where I'm some I'm some I'm stop dot dot some I'm always set dot 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 dot. Basement, he told his wife. Aliens are attacking the town. Aliens. Sarah Miller could not believe what she was hearing. Bob, that's impossible. There are no aliens out here. I saw them. They have weapons and armor. Just do what I say. Bob grabbed his hunting rifle and checked to make sure it was loaded. He'd been a good shot when he was younger, but he had never had to shoot at anything that could shoot back. The sound of energy weapons firing began to echo through the town. Captain Turner and his men had taken positions behind buildings and were trying to fight the invaders. But their old rifles were no match for alien technology. The enemy weapons cut through walls and metal like they were made of paper. Fall back. Turner shouted to his men, "We can't stop them here. Try to warn the families." Jake Brown's father, Tom Brown, heard the shooting and grabbed his son. "We have to run, Jake. Bad people are attacking our town. But what about Danny and Lucy?" Jake asked, "We can't leave our friends. We'll come back for them later. Right now, we have to get you somewhere safe." Tom Brown carried his son toward the woods behind their house. All around them, other families were trying to escape or hide. Some made it to the trees. Others were not so lucky. The Zelthran soldiers moved through the town like a machine. They kicked down doors and searched every room. When they found children, they used strange devices that made the young ones fall asleep. Then they carried the unconscious children to their ships. Danny Johnson heard his mother crying in the back room where they were hiding. Through the thin walls, they could hear alien voices speaking in a language that sounded like hissing snakes. "Stay. Quiet, Danny," Lisa whispered. "Don't make any sound."
At!
The front door exploded inward as Zelthran soldiers blasted it apart. Dot. Pete Johnson fired his rifle at them, but the bullets bounced off their armor like raindrops. One of the aliens pointed a weapon at him, and Pete fell to the floor, his body smoking from the energy blast. "Dad!" Danny screamed, but his mother covered his mouth with her hand. The aliens found them quickly. They used their sleeping device on Danny, and the boy's eyes closed as he fell unconscious. Lisa Johnson fought like a wild animal to protect her son, but she was no match for armored soldiers with advanced weapons. "Please don't take him," she begged as they carried Danny away. "He's just a little boy. Please, I'll give you anything you want." But the Zelthran soldiers did not care about her tears or her words. They had their orders, and human emotions meant nothing to them. Captain Turner managed to reach his radio before an alien weapon found him. His last breath, he sent a message to the nearest human military base, 3 days away by the fastest ship, New Haven under attack by alien forces. "They are taking our children. 43 kids captured. Send help, please. Someone help us." The message reached the human defense station at Alpha, relayed just as the last Zelthran ship lifted off from New Haven. Lieutenant Commander Kate Phillips received the desperate call while reviewing patrol schedules in her office. Phillips had been in the military for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for the words she heard in Turner's dying message. Our children taken by aliens. It was every parent's worst nightmare, and it had just become real. She immediately sent the message up the chain of command. Within an hour, it reached Admiral Kate Morrison at Earth Defense Command. Morrison was a mother herself, with 2 children, safe at home on Earth. When she read the report from New Haven, her hands shook with rage. "Get me President Carter's office," Morrison told her aide. "This is a priority 1 emergency." The news spread through human space like fire through dry. grass. On every human world, from the crowded cities of Earth to the mining colonies on the edge of known space, people heard about New Haven and felt the same cold fury in their hearts. President Lisa Carter addressed the unified colonies within hours of receiving the report. Her image appeared on screens across human space, and her voice carried the weight of every parent's fear. Fellow humans, today our children were taken from us by alien raiders. 43 innocent young ones were stolen from their families. On New Haven, this attack was not just against one small colony. It was an attack against all of humanity. Carter's words reached every human settlement. We will not rest until every child is brought home safely. We will show these aliens what happens when someone threatens human children. We will make them regret the day they decided to prey on our young. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every human world began preparing for war. The news from New Haven reached every corner of human space within 24 hours. On Earth, Admiral Kate Morrison stood in the command center watching reports flood in from across the galaxy. Every human colony, every space station, every mining outpost was sending the same message. They wanted to help bring the children home. Morrison had never seen anything like it in her 30 years of military service. Usually getting the colonies to agree on anything took months of arguing. In politics, but this was different. When aliens took human children, every disagreement suddenly became meaningless. Admiral, we have over 200 ships requesting permission to join the rescue mission, reported Captain Ben Walsh, her chief of staff. And more are coming in every hour. Morrison nodded. She understood the feeling. Her own daughter was safe at home, but every time she thought about those 43 children in alien hands, her heart filled with cold rage. Tell them all, yes, we're going to need every ship we can get. On New Haven, the surviving parents gathered in what was left of the town center. Lisa Johnson sat on a broken piece of wall, staring at the place where her son Danny had been taken. Her husband Pete was in the medical center, badly hurt but alive. The alien weapons had not killed him, but he would need weeks to recover. We can't just sit here and wait, Lisa said to the other parents around her. Our children are out there somewhere, and we have to do something. Sarah Miller, Lucy's mother, held Lisa's hand. Her own heart was breaking, but she knew they had to. Stay strong. What can we do? We don't have ships or weapons or any way to fight aliens. We can help the people who do, Lisa replied. My Pete knows about military ships. He can help them get ready for whatever they need to do. Bob Miller stepped forward. His house had been destroyed in the attack, but his determination was stronger than ever. I used to work on engines. If they need mechanics, I can help fix their ships. All across the small group of survivors, parents began volunteering their skills. Tom Brown had been a communications expert. Mrs. Parker knew about computers. Even old Mr. Anderson, who had lost his grandson in the attack, offered to help cook meals for the rescue crews. The first military ships began arriving at New Haven 3 days after the attack. Captain Ryan Hayes landed with a full company of Marines and immediately began investigating what had happened. Hayes was a calm, professional soldier. But when he saw the burn marks where children had been dragged from their homes, his jaw tightened with anger. We found wreckage from their ships, Hayes reported to Admiral Morrison. Dr. Sam Rodriguez is analyzing the metal. He thinks he can figure out where they came from. Dr. Rodriguez worked day and night in his laboratory, studying pieces of alien technology left behind in the attack. He was the best scientist in human space when it came to understanding foreign technology. His computers ran analysis after analysis, looking for any clue about who had taken the children. These ships are Zelthran design, Rodriguez finally announced. The metal signature matches records from our diplomatic files. The Zelthran Consortium runs trading operations in the Kethver system, about 40 light-years from here. Admiral Morrison felt a cold satisfaction when she heard the news. Now they had a target. How well defended is their system? It's very well, Rodriguez admitted. Intelligence reports show they have over 300 military ships and multiple space stations with heavy weapons. It's going to be a tough fight. Morrison smiled grimly. They should have thought about that before they took our children. Word spread quickly that the enemy had been identified. On every human world, people began preparing for the largest military operation in their history. Ships that had been retired were pulled out of storage and refitted with new weapons. Civilian vessels were converted into troop transports. Factories worked around the clock to build ammunition and supplies. President Carter held emergency meetings with the leaders of every human colony. Usually these politicians spent their time arguing about trade routes and resource rights. Now they sat around the table with one single purpose. How many ships can each world contribute? Carter asked. Directly. Alpha Centauri can send 50 military vessels and 200 converted civilian ships, reported Governor Phillips. Mars Colony has 30 warships ready to go, said Admiral Torres. The Outer Rim mining worlds are sending everything they have, added Representative Johnson. About 150 ships of various sizes. The numbers kept growing. Every human settlement was emptying their defenses to join the rescue mission. It was dangerous to leave their homes unprotected, but no one cared. The children came. First, Captain Maria Santos commanded a heavy cruiser called the Vengeance. She'd been patrolling the neutral zone when the call came for volunteers. Without hesitation, she turned her ship toward Earth to join the growing fleet. "Captain, are you sure about this?" asked her second-in-command, Lieutenant Collins. "We're supposed to guard the shipping lanes." "The shipping lanes can wait," Santos replied. "Those aliens just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They hurt human children, and now they're going to learn what that costs." All across human space, similar conversations were happening on hundreds of ships. Professional soldiers, civilian pilots, even retired veterans who had not flown in years were all heading toward the same destination. The fleet gathering at Earth grew larger every day. Pete Johnson recovered enough to leave the medical center on New Haven, his wife. Lisa helped him walk to the temporary command post that Captain Hayes had set up in the old school building. "Admiral Morrison wants to speak with you," Hayes told Pete. "She heard about your military background and thinks you can help plan the assault." Pete looked at his wife, then at the other parents who had lost children. "What do you need me to do?" "Help us design ships that can break through alien defenses," Hayes explained. "We need every advantage we can get." Pete nodded slowly. "I'll do whatever it takes to bring Danny home." All of them. The planning began immediately. Pete worked with human engineers to modify their ships for the coming battle, as they added extra armor, more powerful weapons, and faster engines. Every improvement brought them one step closer to reaching the children. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the assembled fleet through the large windows. Over 3,000 ships now floated in formation around Earth. It was the largest military force humanity had ever created, all focused on one mission. "Admiral, the fleet is ready," reported Captain Walsh. "All ships have been supplied and their crews briefed on the mission." Morrison took a deep breath. In all her years of service, she had never led anything like this. But when she thought about those 43 children waiting to be rescued, she felt absolutely certain about what they had to do. "Send the order." "To all ships," Morrison commanded. "We're going to bring our children home." The great fleet began to move, turning toward the distant Kethfer system, where the Zelthran Consortium waited. They had no idea what was coming for them. The human fleet dropped out of faster than light, to travel at the edge of the Kethfer system like a storm made of metal and fire. 3,000 ships spread across space in perfect formation, their weapons powered and their crews ready for battle. "Admiral," Morrison stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the alien star system on her screens. Somewhere in that cluster of planets and space stations were 43 human children, and she was going to bring them home no matter what it cost. "Enemy ships detected," reported the sensor officer. 250 Zelthran vessels. "Moving to intercept us." Morrison smiled coldly. The aliens were outnumbered more than 10 to 1, but she knew they would fight anyway. The Zelthran had built their empire by being the strongest force in any battle. They had never faced humans before. "All ships. This is Admiral Morrison," she announced over the fleet communications. "Remember why we're here. Those children are counting on us. Show these aliens what happens when they threaten human families." Commander Vexstar watched the approaching human fleet from his command ship with growing alarm. He had expected maybe 50 ships, possibly 100 at most. But the humans had brought an entire armada, and they were advancing with the coordination of a military force that meant business. "Sir, should we try to negotiate?" asked his second officer. "Maybe we can return the children in exchange for them leaving our space?" Vextar's yellow eyes flashed with anger. "We are Zelthran. We do not negotiate with inferior species. Prepare all weapons and launch our fighters." The first battle began at the outer edge of the system. Zelthran ships opened fire with their energy weapons, sending bright beams of death toward the human fleet. But the humans had learned from studying the wreckage on New Haven. Their ships now carried special armor that could absorb much of the alien weapon energy. Captain Ben Walsh led the first wave of human fighters in his modified cruiser, the Alien. Ships were faster and had better weapons, but the humans fought with a fury that surprised their enemies. When Walsh's ship took heavy damage, he didn't retreat. Instead, he aimed straight at a Zelthran cruiser and rammed it at full speed. 4. The children of New Haven. Walsh shouted as his ship exploded, taking the alien vessel with it. All across the battle zone, similar acts of sacrifice played out. Human pilots whose ships were destroyed ejected in escape pods, then used their remaining weapons to attack any alien ship that came close. The Zelthran had never faced an enemy that fought with such desperate determination. Captain Maria Santos pushed her cruiser Vengeance through the alien defense line, her weapons cutting apart everything in her path. Her target was the moon of Kethfer Prime, where Dr. Rodriguez had traced the children's location. "Captain, we're taking heavy fire," reported her weapons officer. "Hull armor is down to 30%. "Keep firing," Santos ordered. "We're not stopping until those children are safe." The Vengeance broke through the orbital defenses around the moon, but at a terrible cost. Half her crew was dead or wounded, and the ship was barely holding together. But Santos had opened a path for the rescue teams to follow. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Keyes led the ground assault with 200 Marines and volunteers from New Haven. Pete Johnson was with them, his injuries still healing, but his determination stronger than ever. These men and women had trained for this moment during the long journey to Zelthran space. "Remember, the children are in the processing facility near the North Pole," Hayes told his team as their transport ships descended toward the moon's surface. "We go in fast, get them out, and leave nothing standing behind us." The Zelthran ground forces tried to stop the human landing, but they were not prepared for the ferocity of the attack. Human soldiers fought like parents protecting their young, which in many ways they were. Every Marine knew that those 43 children could just as easily have been their own sons and daughters. Pete Johnson followed the assault team through the corridors of the alien facility. His heart pounded as they searched room after room, looking for any sign of the children. Finally, they found a heavily secured area with multiple locks and guards. "This has to be it," Hayes said, placing charges on the sealed door. The explosion blew the door apart, and the rescue team rushed inside. What they found made their hearts leap with joy and rage at the same time. 43 children sat in small cells, frightened but alive. Danny Johnson saw his father and began to cry with relief. "Dad, is it really you?" Danny asked through the bars of his cell. "It's me, son," Pete said, his voice breaking with emotion. "We're here to take you home." The children were weak and scared, but they were all alive. Lucy Miller reached for Sarah Miller, who had somehow convinced the military to let her come on the rescue mission. Jake Brown clung to his father Tom, who had volunteered as a communications specialist. "Are we really going home?" Lucy asked her mother. "Yes, sweetheart," Sarah replied, tears streaming down her face. "We're all going home together." But the rescue was only the beginning of what the humans had planned. Admiral Morrison had not brought 3,000 ships just to retrieve the children. The Zelthran Consortium had made an enemy of humanity, and there would be consequences. "All ships, begin Phase 2, Morrison ordered. "Destroy every Zelthran military installation in this system." The systematic destruction of Zelthran power began immediately. Human ships hunted down every enemy vessel, space station, and weapons platform in the system. The aliens tried to surrender. Morrison was in no mood for mercy. Commander Vextar attempted to escape in a fast scout ship, But Captain Turner, who had survived his injuries on New Haven, was waiting for him. Turner had commanded one of the rescue ships, and he had been looking for the alien commander throughout the battle. "This is for the children you stole," Turner said as his weapons found their target. Vextar's ship became a brief flash of light against the stars. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Zelthron Consortium no longer existed as a military force. Their ships were destroyed, their bases were ruins, and their reputation as galactic predators was finished forever. The children were loaded onto medical ships for the journey home. Danny Johnson sat with his parents as human doctors checked to make sure he was healthy. Around him, the other children were reunited with their families or with volunteers who promised to care for them until they could get home. "Will the bad aliens come back?" Danny asked his father. "No, son," Pete replied. "They'll never bother human children again. Ah, I promise you that." The Great Fleet began its journey back to human space, carrying its precious cargo of rescued children. Behind them, the Kethver system burned with the wreckage of alien ships. The message was clear to every species in the galaxy: human children were protected by the full might of humanity, and anyone who threatened them would face the consequences. News of the rescue spread across known space faster than the returning ships. Alien governments that had never paid attention to humans suddenly took very careful note of what had happened to the Zelthron. The young human race had just announced itself as a force that should never be underestimated. The children of New Haven were home.